Good day and welcome to Predators Proclivity, where we look at data from the season for the NHL Nashville Predators and make comments upon it. I'm your host, Preston Proctor. All righty. So in the postseason watch, Dallas has clinched a playoff spot and Seattle has been eliminated. Yeah, and it looks like the next team potentially to be eliminated, it is actually our opponent tonight, Philadelphia. Buffalo and Philadelphia are tied at 69. They're 1 point apart. 68 points for Buffalo, 69 for Philadelphia. But Philadelphia has played 2 more games. So they only have 7 points left, and they are 8 points out of a playoff spot. So it's getting tight for them. Buffalo 9 points out and 9 games left. So even though they're a point behind Philadelphia has played 2 more games. Dallas has clinched a playoff spot. They're still 6 points behind Winnipeg. They have 1 game in hand. So that's good for them, but that's not looking like they're going to overtake Winnipeg in this particular case. Let's just make them bigger so I don't have to keep squinting. Yeah. So, okay. So Toronto got a big win over LA. They've got a 3-point lead in the Atlantic over Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay and Florida are tied at 91, even in number of points. So that's going to be a pretty good contest. The Metropolitan Washington is at 103, 9 points ahead of Carolina, so they're going to win that division. The Devils are at 85, so there's still a couple of decent gaps behind, but between those two teams. So it's again, as I said before, Washington, Carolina, and New Jersey are going to be winning that division. They're going to be in that order. The Rangers are 4th in that division right now. So they're 8 points behind with 8 games left. So it doesn't look like they are going to be able to overtake. But hey, the Rangers are now back in a playoff spot, which is different. In the Atlantic, Florida and Tampa Bay have 7 points on Ottawa. Ottawa has 9 games left. So it's looking pretty much like it's those 3 teams. Unless a complete collapse happens, Minnesota-ish. But that's looking pretty solid. Then in the Central, Winnipeg and Dallas have both clinched. Colorado's at 93 points, 7 points behind Dallas, 6 points ahead of Minnesota. Both teams with 8 games left. So that's looking. The Central Division looks like it should be Winnipeg, Dallas, and Colorado as the divisional spots, and in that order. Not much doubt there. And then also in the Pacific, we've got the Golden Knights, Vegas at 98 points, 7 points ahead of Los Angeles. So they'll be winning the Pacific and not competing for the top of the Western Conference. So they'll be the second divisional winner. They'll play the first wild card team. And then you've got the Kings and the Oilers, the Kings are 2 points ahead of the Oilers, both teams 9 games left. So depending on how they play out their schedule, that could go either way. No doubt about them being divisional teams and playing in the second and third spot, just like last year. Edmonton is 8 points ahead of Vancouver. Vancouver has 8 games left. Calgary is 9 points behind Edmonton with 10 games left. So it doesn't look like Calgary can overtake Edmonton. And then in your wild card race, currently Ottawa and Montreal in the East, with Ottawa has a 7-point lead over Montreal. Montreal 9 games left. So Ottawa should wind up with one of the wild card spots. They could overtake New Jersey. No, they're in the other division. They cannot overtake New Jersey because they're not in that division. And the Rangers are at 77, same as Montreal. The Rangers have played one more game, so Montreal gets the tie break there, and then 2 points back to Columbus, who has played two less than New York and one less than Montreal. So it's still tight there. And then you've got Detroit at 74 and the Islanders at 74, and both of those teams have 9 games left and 3 points back. So Pittsburgh then comes in 6 points behind that with 7 games left. It's unlikely Pittsburgh could climb over that many teams and take a wild card spot. So it's looking it's going to be a good race for the for one of the wild card spots. I think Ottawa will get one, and then Montreal, New York, Rangers, Columbus, Detroit, and the Islanders kind of fighting it out there to get the second one, which it could be the first wild card spot if Ottawa stumbles. But either way, I think that's how that's going to play out. And then down in the Western Conference, we've got Minnesota and St. Louis tied at 87 points. Minnesota one less, so they are currently in the first wild card spot. And then there's 6 points between St. Louis and Vancouver. And Vancouver has 8 games left. Getting a little dicey for them. The Calgary is 7 points behind with three games in hand. So Calgary, I think, is still in the driver's seat. Utah down at 78, 9 points out with 8 games left. I think we can pretty much eliminate considering Utah in the fight for a wild card spot. So, Minnesota, St. Louis, Vancouver, Calgary. I'd say Calgary's in the driver's seat, and then Minnesota slight edge over St. Louis because they do have a game in hand, and then Vancouver, the fourth team, fighting for both of those wild card spots. I'd say both of those wild card spots are up for grabs. So in the East, you've got one position that isn't determined. Or one playoff spot. I still say it's potentially not the first wild card. Ottawa could wind up not being the first wild card. They could want to be in the second, but one of the wild card spots is still up for fight. And then in the West, both wild card spots are up for a contest. So that's the postseason look. As far as how the Predators are doing, they did just sign Matthew Wood to a 3-year entry-level contract. Probably haven't heard, if you keep up, maybe you did. I haven't. He's not an unrestricted free agent. He's been playing. He's been in college. He's a junior in college. Played 2 years for the University of Connecticut. Played for Minnesota this last year. Just signed to a 3-year entry-level contract. He was the first-round pick by Nashville in 2023. So he got picked by Nashville, and then he's been playing in college. Good for him, but not a free agent. Doesn't change the status of the free agents that we're tracking. Bellows and Delgaizo, two of the unrestricted free agents that we are tracking, not listed as on the club roster. At least on ESPN, but playing in the games. They went on waivers last week, cleared waivers, and then they've been playing for the Preds. So I'm not sure why they had to go through waivers. Are they technically just being loaned to Nashville from Milwaukee now? I don't know. I have to figure out who I can ask and find out because I have no idea. Anyway, so that's your postseason watch. For tonight, the Nashville Predators go on the road, and back-to-back situation. They play tonight and tomorrow night. Tonight and tomorrow night on the road. Tonight they are in Philadelphia. Philadelphia tomorrow in Columbus. And then they go to Dallas on Thursday. So a 3-game road trip. This is the start. Philadelphia is the first game. It's at 6 o'clock Central, which is fine because Philadelphia is in the Eastern time zone. I guess it doesn't matter. It's a schedule. And Philadelphia fired their coach, John Tortorella on Thursday. It was his third season with Philadelphia. It feels like he's coached everywhere, but I guess just only 5 teams. It feels like he's been everywhere. He's been with the Rangers, the Lightning, the Canucks, the Blue Jackets, and now Philadelphia. They said 23 years. He's been a coach in the NHL for 23 years, and he's played in all 5 in 5 different. Coached for 5 different teams over the 23 years. And since they fired him, Philadelphia has won their last 2. I guess they lost 6 in a row, 1 in overtime. And then the leadership just decided to fire Tortorella, not the pasta, Tortorella. Yeah. As far as the series between Philadelphia and Nashville, this is the second game of 2 versus Philadelphia. Philadelphia is 1-0, having won 3-2 in overtime in Nashville, which, looking at those sort of symmetry, last year the game in Nashville was also 3-2 in overtime. But Nashville won that one. Nashville swept Philadelphia last year, winning 4-2 in Philadelphia. But 3-2 overtime in Nashville is the score both for last year and this year. But the winning team changed. Interesting. The order played in Nashville and then in Philadelphia is the same as last year as this year. Usually those things reverse, but I think with I don't know, when it comes to the other conference, maybe that's not as big of a deal because you're only playing twice, and you just kind of work it into the schedule. You try to screw the Preds on back-to-backs as much as possible. Back-to-backs on the road, that is the story of the year for the Nashville Predators. For this year, the loss for Nashville was the second game in an 8-game losing streak. It was, interestingly enough, the first of 3 overtime losses in a row. So Nashville lost 8 in a row. This was the second game, and then this was the first of 3 overtime losses in a row. So that was a bad time for Nashville, and a good time for anybody that needed a win. And that turned out to be Philadelphia for one of those. Yeah, so Philadelphia is 30-36-9. They are 18-19-1. That is almost 500. 8th in the Metropolitan with 69 points, 2 points behind Pittsburgh, whom they are even with. And for them, this is the last of a 3-game homestand, which corresponds to when Tortorella was fired. So they're 2-0 on this homestand, beating Montreal on Thursday 6-4, and then Saturday Buffalo 7-4. At the trade deadline, they did have a trade with Colorado. They sent Eric Johnson and a third-round 2025 pick to Colorado for forward Giovanni Smith. They had a trade with Toronto. They sent forward Scott Lawton, a 4th-round 2025 and a 6th-round 2027 for forward Nikita Grabenkin and a 1st-round 2027. And then with L.A., the Kings, they sent forward Andrei Kuzmenko and a 7th-round 2025 and got a 3rd-round 2027. So I'm not sure what the deals were, but what they were trying to accomplish. But there you go. They had 3 trades with teams that are trying to be playoff teams, which is kind of weird that they gave up a 4th round. Well, I guess they got a 1st round 2027, but they gave up a 4th round 2025, 6th round 2027, and a forward. To get a forward in a 1st round 2027, I guess you'd have to actually know who these people are in order to. So not much analysis going on here, just reading off the paper. So thanks for listening. As far as the player update, number 55 defenseman Rasmus Ristolainen is out, not expected to be back tonight. And neither is number 19 right wing Garnet Hathaway. also not expected to be back tonight. Nothing much to mention as far as stats on Ristolainen. Hathaway is second in penalty minutes, so I guess really nothing there either. Two interesting transactions on the 25th of March. Number 35 goaltender Alexei Kolosov was recalled from the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. And you guys know I just love looking at team names. And so even though this has got nothing to do with the NHL, it's in the Philadelphia sphere. And on the 27th, Jet, good name for a hockey player, unless he's a goaltender, Jet Luchanko was moved from the OHL Guelph Storm to AHL Lehigh Valley Phantoms. So the guy gets to move from Guelph, Ontario, Canada, to Allentown, Pennsylvania. All right, the Storm to the Phantoms. Not sure how that relates to Flyers, but there you go. Yeah, gotta like that. Your Nashville Predators are 27, 38, and 8. 27, 38, and 8. Oh, no idea what I said. On the road, again, not very good, 9, 22, and 5. They are 7th in the Central Division. That's where they're going to finish up. They have 62 points. They're 11 points ahead of Chicago, who's played one more. And I think, let's see, going back, Chicago has played 74, so they've got 8 games left. So they've got 8 games left, and they're 11 points behind Nashville. So, that's you can pretty much write that one off. Nashville is 16 points behind Utah. Nashville has 9 games left, so write that one off. So not going to be able to overtake either one of those. Their record is, the overall record is still the third worst record in hockey, 6 points behind Buffalo and Seattle. Buffalo has overtaken Seattle because Seattle has played one more game than both Nashville and Buffalo. So Buffalo is even in number of games played and left with Nashville. Didn't update that. But today, tonight's game is the first of a 3-game road trip. Tomorrow they play Colorado, and then they go on to Dallas on Thursday. So playing Columbus Blue Jackets on April Fool's Day. But we're not talking about that game. We're talking about the March 31st game with Nashville and Philadelphia. New changes for Nashville. Number 10 center Colton Sissons is out. Could be back today. Solid player. Saw him go down in the, I guess it was the St. Louis game. Just went down really weird. It wasn't. Went down really weird, off balance, and I don't know. It was hard to watch. Yossi's still out. And no new transactions. They got the signing, but as far as players moving around, nothing new. All right, so let's take a look at some road stats. Let's look at my favorite road stat. 9. Let's change this. It's 9 and 22. So they're 9 and 22 and 5. 9, 22 and 5 on the road. Taking out all of the back-to-back games, they'd be 6, 6 and 4 because they're 3, 16 and 1 in all of the road games that they have played in back-to-back situations. So yes, they have played 20 games in back-to-back situations on the road. 1, 2, 3 of those were away and home. They had played in Chicago, then came to Nashville. They played in Nashville, then went to Minnesota. And then the last one, they played at home versus Toronto and then went to St. Louis. So I think they've kind of gotten screwed by the schedule. Taking a look at the last team that they played, I think was not Carolina, but the team, St. Louis was also played St. Louis in back-to-backs. At the time they had 10 back-to-back situations. 12 of the games were away and 8 were at home. So that's close close to, well, I mean, I guess that math is easy since it's 20, right? So it'd be 60% on the road, 40% at home, versus the Preds have had 6 games at home with all these back-to-backs and 20 on the road. So this is, and 2 more because this is the last back-to-back of the year. So that will make it 14, so 28 games. And so 22 of those games will have been on the road. They only play 41 road games. So of the 41 road games, 22 of them would have been in back-to-back situations, which I think is just really horrible scheduling. And I don't know that it's that particular situation that really caused problems for the Preds. They had a lot of other problems this year, but it sure did not help. It sure did not help. Okay, so let's touched on that. That's been a pet peeve of mine. I've been doing a little bit of analysis. Can't quite get the data that I would like to get, but I know if you look at the teams that have had the most back-to-backs, they are not all in the bottom of the league. So that in and of itself is not necessarily. And that's why, I started thinking, oh, well, gosh, the Preds are having to play a lot at on the road. And so looking at the teams that we've had to play, I guess St. Louis. Well, anyway, the other teams have not had as many road games. So I think if you're playing a back-to-back and you're at home, well, that's easier than if you've got to travel, especially the Preds had to travel once from Winnipeg to when it was Winnipeg to Minnesota. So I know that Winnipeg to Minnesota. I know that crossing the border is not as difficult for pro teams as it is for you and I. They've got it's a lot more structured, a lot more things going on to make sure it's easier for them, but it's still travel. And it's still a little bit harder. So, Winnipeg to Minnesota, both of those games were losses. That's my new pet peeve. But I unfortunately, unless I figure out how to get access to the NHL database, or I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that analysis, because it's not readily available on their stats page. They don't look at things quite like that. I did start taking a look at the number of, or how teams were doing based upon the number of days between games. Now, the thing about that stat is you think, okay, so there were 0 days between those 2 games, but they only give you the stats for the second game. So the game that was before that, who knows how many days were before that game was played. It's a little hard to find out what the records are of teams on the games before when that stat is not readily available on the at least I haven't figured it out yet on the NHL stat. So, and as I've mentioned, I'm just a guy sitting behind just sitting behind a microphone, but just sitting at my computer and trying to take information that I can find on the web and plug it into spreadsheets and come up with some analysis. And the more I do, the more I'd like to be able to do. It's fascinating. I think it's just fascinating. Anyway, so the Preds on the road, when they get the goal in the first period, they are 7-3-2. So they still have a winning record if they get the goal in the first period. And if they get the first goal, if they get it in the first period, they're 3-3-2. So that's a coin flip in any direction, I guess. It could be heads, tails, or land on its side. 3-3-2. If they get the first goal in the second period, they're 4-0. If they do not get the first goal, they're it's not a very good record this year. 2-19-3. 2-12-2 in the first, 0-6 in the second, 0-1 in the third, and 0-1 in overtime. If the other team gets the first goal anywhere other than the first period, the Preds have not had any success this year, which is different from last year. The Preds were pretty good, but they had a much better record last year. In the on the road, if they got the first goal, they were 19-5-1 last year. If the opponents got the first goal, they were 5-9-2. So that's a big change from last year. But yeah, they definitely had a better record on the road last year. So yeah, when this is a thing that's a little tough about doing this kind of analysis and looking at this data is since things are not so good. That everything kind of looks like anything they do is going to wind up being a loss. Yeah, they were 24-14-3 last year on the road. So that's they were 23-16-2 at home last year. So they're close to what they did last year at home. But the road record is basically the wins and losses swap places, kind of. So yeah. So that's your first goal of the game. I have to say I'm not – I guess because of the way things are going this year, the announcers aren't making as big a deal as getting the first goal as I felt like they were last year, which is why I had to include this in my analysis because I thought, well, that's just totally bogus. But it turned out not to be last year anyway. For the Preds in the first period, well, in all periods, they have a losing record. In the first period, they're 7-12-17. So about as likely or more likely to tie, or no, the math just went wrong, about as likely to tie the first period as to win or lose it. 17 ties. The second period, 9-16-11. So it pretty evenly distributed between winning and tying. And almost twice as likely to lose it. And then in the third period, 8-16-12, 0-5-0 in overtime. So yeah, that's not good stats. Not good stats. And again, it comes down to how does that translate, right? So how does that correlate? I guess is what I'm saying. So. Of the 7 games where the Preds won the first period, they were 3-4. 1-11 when they lost it, 5-12 when they tied it. So coin flip, if they win the period, coin flip on whether or not they're going to be able to win. And then if they tie it, about 2-1, that they'll lose. And then if they lose the first period, it doesn't look very good. If they win the second period, they have a winning record. So the 9 times that they won the second period, they're 6-3. When they lost it, they're 1-15, and when they tie it, 2-9. So the best trend there is to win the second period. Oddly enough, they've got more wins if they tie the first than if they win the first. Boy, that's just really strange pulling there. I think what do I say here? I feel like their best scenario on the road is to tie the first and win the second. That's happened 5 times, and they've won all 5 of those games. The third period, how do things correlate? The 8 times they've won it, they are 6-2. Now, if you take out empty nets, they've actually won the third period 9 times, and they're 5-4 in those. When they lose the third period, they're 1-15, and when they tie it, they're 2-10. Yeah, that kind of makes a lot of sense given that it's the third period, right? So yeah, as I said, if they tie the first and win the second, they're 5-0-0. If they lose the first and win the second, 4 times that's happened, it's 1-2-1. And on the road, they have not won the first and won the second, so that's 0. That would be a good scenario because winning 2 periods almost assures that you're going to win the game, about 98.72%. Just making it up, picking up numbers. Happened twice this season where the Preds have won 2 periods and lost both games. Last year it happened once where they won 2 periods, lost 2 periods, won the game. So that was the one exception last year, two exceptions this year. If they tie the first and lose the second, they're 0-7. So, and if they tie the first, tie the second, they're 0-3-2. So if they tie the first, their only hope is kind of to win the second. Losing the first, like I said, they are 1-2-1. If they lose the first and win the second, if they lose the first, lose the second, they've done that 5 times. Those are all losses. If they lose the first, tie the second, those are all losses. Winning the first, winning the second hasn't happened. Winning the first, tying the second is 1-1-2. So that's a little better than losing the first and winning the second, just slightly better. And then winning the first, tying the second, they're at least 2-1. So they have a winning record in those situations with only 3 data points. So yeah, my favorite scenario, it's just so crazy, is to tie the first and win the second. And given that they are undefeated when they have scored the first goal in the second period, kind of pull for a 0-0 first period, and then the Preds get the first goal in the second period, and then you can pretty much put your money down and walk away. Yeah. All right. The winning goal. The winning goal on the road, 44% of the time, is in the second period. So as much, actually more than in the first and third. 5 times in the first, 10 in the third, 5 in overtime, 16 in the second. So 44% of the time, the winning goal is being scored in the second period. If the Preds win, 56% of the time they've gotten it in the second period, followed by 44 in the third. So that's 5 and 4. So that's trend. When the Preds lose, the opponents 41% of the time are getting the winning goal in the second period, which is the same number as the first and sixth, 5 and 6. They also have 5 in overtime. So on the road, the home team winning, the road team winning. So this year for the Preds, the home team has won 45 times and the road team has won 27. Given that the Preds have such a bad record on the road, I guess that's not. I might have calculated that stat. That's something new I started tracking this year. That's wow. Last year that was different. The home team won 40 times. The road team won 42 last year, and a whopping 50% of the time the home team would get the winning goal. When the home team won, they would get the winning goal in the second period, and the road team would get it 43% of the time. But last year there was definitely a little bit of a bias there from the standpoint that the Preds, when they would win at home, were 39% of the time getting the winning goal in the second period, and when they lost, the opponents were getting it in the third, 44%, and then that switched on the road. So the Preds, when they won on the road, 42% of the time in the third, and 65% of the time when the opponents won, they would get the winning goal in the second. So that was a lot heavier biased there to the different periods and whether you're on the home or the road. But this year, the home team is getting the winning goal 33% of the time, or when the home team wins, 33% of the time the winning goal is in the second period, followed by 27% in the third. So 15 and 12, pretty close. And then when the road team wins, 41% of the time, when the road team wins, the 41% of the time the winning goal is in the second period and 33 in the third, so 11 and 9. So both of those numbers are fairly close. Slight edge to the second period. That's not that's a little surprising, a little different than the way things were last season. As far as goal scoring, this is again, not one of the since the Preds have the problem of not scoring enough goals. Last year they were not as bad, but they did have a better record. They finished up last year on the road. They did finish up outshooting the opponents in the first and not in the second and third. It was close in the second and third. They were outscored by 2 in the second and outscored by 1 in the third on the road, and were outscoring the opponents by 14, which was almost 50%, 43-29. This year, different scenario. They are being outscored in every period on the road, and barely have an advantage in the first period when they win the game. So when they've won, and granted it hasn't happened a lot, when they've won, they have outscored the opponent 7-5 in the first, 17-8 in the second, 13-5 in the third, and again taking away empty net goals. That comes down to 7-5 because there are 6 empty net goals. Where did I lose my? 13-5. Yeah, 13-5 could become 7-5, but they are still outscoring when they win. I guess it's exactly the same as the first period. Interesting enough, taking out the empty net goals, 7-5 in the first, 7-5 in the third, and then 17-8 in the second. Yeah, when the Preds win, they're on the road, they're scoring about 3.4, so not quite 3.5. And the opponents are scoring 2. So those are tight contests. When the Preds lose, they're only scoring 1.5 goals to the opponent's 3.4. That is taking out the empty nets. 3.9 for the opponents when they win with the empty nets back in, and 4.1 for the Preds. And so, and 37. They've scored 37 goals on when they win, and 6 of them. So that's about 16%. 6 of 36, about a sixth, are empty net goals. That's a pretty high percentage, but there's just not a lot of wins, so there's not a lot of scoring going on there. When they lose, they're being outscored 2-1 in the first. Almost 3-1 in the second, and then like 2.5-1 in the third. They have 14-29, 13-36, 14-34. So overall, that is, not what you're looking for. But there you go. On the road, looking at the difference in goal scoring in the second period and third period, in the 3 scenarios where the Preds are winning, the Preds are tied, the Preds are losing. So if the Preds enter the second period and they're winning, they're being outscored 5-12. If they are tied, they're being outscored 14-16. And if they are losing, they're being outscored 11-16. So that's, a total of 30-44, which is, they're being outscored. But they're being outscored in all 3 of those scenarios, even if they come into the second period winning. If they come into the third period winning, they are outscoring the opponents 12-8. That does include 5 empty net goals. So they are actually taking out the empty net goals. They're actually being outscored in the third period 7-8 when they come into the third period winning. When they come into the third period tied, they're being outscored 2-4. There is an empty net goal for the opponents, so that's 2-3. They're close. I guess they haven't come into the third period tied very often. And anyway, okay, not looking for numbers. Keep talking. All right, and so if they enter the third period and they're losing, they're outscored 13-27. Granted, there are 9 empty net goals in there, so they're being outscored 13-18, taking out the empty nets. So, yeah, in all 3 scenarios, Preds winning, Preds tied, Preds losing, coming into both the second and third period, the Preds are being outscored, taking out the empty net goals. If you leave them in, they're outscoring their opponents 12-8. But 5 of those goals, almost half, are empty net goals. So, I keep looking for scenarios that provide more I'm like, oh, wait a minute, what about this? What about that? What about this? And haven't quite been able to find that scenario that I like to report. Well, that's not true. Here's a stat that I like to report. Let's talk about special teams. Hey, as bad as I think Nashville is in the second period, and as we've discussed as far as scoring goes, both at home and on the road, they are 29% on their power play in the second period on the road, which is better than what they are at home. On the road, they have gotten 12 power play goals in 41 opportunities. That's astounding. So they've gotten 19 power play goals on the road. Total 12 came in the second period. Now they are giving up 13. They do give up 13 power play goals in the second period, which is 27%. The opponents are 27%. They've had 7 more opportunities than the Preds. The Preds have had 10 more opportunities in the third period than the opponents with 3 less goals. So they are only 10% effective. 10% effective, 4 goals on 41 opportunities, same number of opportunities in the second and third, and a third of the goals. So they are really not taking advantage of the power plays in the third period. The first period, they are 15%, 3 goals on 20 opportunities. So almost as many goals in the first as the third on half of the opportunities. So there's something that is not so great, but the 12 on 41 in the second is something worth sitting up and paying attention to, just like the 2 goals for the opponents on 42 opportunities in the first. So that was 0 until a couple of weeks ago when I noticed it. Now it's 5%. 2 on 42. So they are not giving up a lot of, 42 opportunities versus 20. So the opponents are getting double the opportunities on the road. But they've only gotten 2 goals this year. Those have become recently. The third period, the Preds are getting more opportunities in the third period. But as I said, the opponents are getting more goals, 7 goals on 31 opportunities for 23%. So yeah, that's a stat worth sitting up and paying attention to. As far as your matchups, we're playing the Philadelphia Flyers tonight. Philadelphia is, as far as goals scoring, they are 20th in the league. The Preds are 32nd. As far as giving up goals, they're 5th in the league to the Preds' 10th. So they score more goals and they give up more goals than the Preds. They score 26 more goals than the Preds, and they have given up 24 more goals than the Preds. So about even number that they have given up and scored. They are, just like the Preds, fairly even in how they score the goals. They're 62 in the first, 71 in the second, 71 in the third. The Preds 55, 64, 62. So pretty even spread across there. The numbers leave Philadelphia in the bottom half, the top of the bottom half of the league in scoring in each of those periods. The Preds are in the bottom 4 or 5 in each of those periods. As far as when Philadelphia likes to give up goals, it's the second period, which I guess would be good for the Preds. The Preds also like to give up goals in the second period, but not to the tune of the 100 goals that Philadelphia, first in the league in giving up goals in the second period. They are first in the league in the second period in giving up goals at 100 goals. They give 85 in the third, which puts them at 9th. Only 68 in the first, which is 12th. The Preds are a little stingy. In the first, only 61, which is 19th in the league, which is good. Pops up to 9th and 11th in the second and third, 84 and 82. So Philadelphia and Nashville are fairly close in giving up goals in the third period. But, Philadelphia whoppingly gives up more in the second than the Preds do. I went ahead and went back and did the calculations between the first period and the third period. In the league, 20.9% more goals are scored in the third period than in the first. So yeah, over the course of the first, second, third period, goal scoring goes up. From the first to the second, it's 13.6, and from the second to the third, it's been about 6.4. So overall, 20.9 on from the first to the third. Penalty situations, again, playing a team that's not good in the penalty kill, which is we've been doing that a lot lately, and that hasn't really worked out for us. But in the penalty kill, Philadelphia is 18th in the league, 77.3%, 42 goals against on 185 opportunities. Comparing that to Nashville, who's one of the top teams in the league, 9th, at 80.9%, 41 goals against on 215 opportunities. So Philadelphia has given up one more goal on 30 less opportunities. For the power play, the Preds are middle in the league, and Philadelphia is one of the worst. I guess you just have to say they're 30th in the league, 14.7%, 29 goals for on 197 opportunities. The Preds are middle of the league, 16th, 21.7, 44 on 203. So the Preds have gotten 15 more goals on only 6 additional opportunities. So that's you got to play the game, so you never know how that's going to work out. But their power play is not very good. Interesting, in the Vegas game the other day, there were only two penalties, which was astounding. Not surprising looking at the stats going in, because they're in Vegas's games. Well, Vegas was one of the teams that got the fewest number of power play opportunities and the fewest number of penalty kill opportunities. So they not a lot of penalties scored in that game. And I'm not a guy that likes to see a lot of penalties. But it was interesting that there were 2 penalties, one on each team, and both teams got a power play goal. So, but Vegas, not surprising, they were 30%. They're top in the league in the power play. I think the Preds ticked up just a wee bit, getting that. But at this point in the season, you're probably not going to make major moves up or down in the ranks unless you completely fall apart or just go on fire. So, which is possible here, coming up on the end of the year, because teams are going to be playing with a little bit more aggression, or, the teams like the Preds, which are trying out players for next year, and the teams are basically auditioning, then the players could play a little bit different than they would the rest of the season. And so the numbers kind of get a little bit jumbled, especially maybe they traded away one of the teams like the Preds. The Preds did not do this, but maybe they did. Trading away a player who is known for being really good on the power play, or in the case of the Preds, you can say that Yossi was very instrumental in their penalty kill, and him being out took them a few games to get, and maybe they're not even. But it affects how the team is going to play, So the numbers that you might have seen all season long kind of get a little screwy here at the end of the season, because things could be different, injuries, and then the trades and what situation they're in, the teams are in heading into each game, each night. They had a lot more focus these days. As far as focus goes, let's look at goalies. That's not really a good segue. Philadelphia, Samuel Ersson, 21-15-5, about 2-1 of even Fedotovs, 5-13-1. Generally about 2-1. I think things of what goaltenders playing, I think also kind of changes here at the end of the year based upon Philadelphia and Nashville are not in the playoff hunt, so they may play the backup more often, maybe something. I mean, the Philadelphia did call up Alexei Kolosov, who has played a few games this year. Fedorov 5-13-3, mentioning him. But Alexei Kolosov, who they have called up, is 4-8-1 with the club. So he had played quite a bit. Actually, Kolosov was in goal in the previous game with Nashville. So he's 1-0 against Nashville. That was that 3-2 overtime win in Nashville. As far as I could tell, it looked like Urson was injured. He's not now, but that's still can't be quite sure what they're going to do since they have called up their goaltender. Urson, last year, Urson was in goal. I think I'm saying that right. In both games that Nashville won both, so Urson was 0-2 last year. And Urson has started the last 3 games, so I think for sure, it's not going to be Urson. Now that I've run through all this again, they might sneak Kolosov in there again, since he did have success the first time, but otherwise it would be Fedotov. So there will be a V, there'll be an OV at the end of the name of the person in goal tonight against the Predators. For the Nashville Predators, UC Saros, 18-28-6. Most of the season was playing 2-ish games for each one. Of Justice Anunen, he was 8-8-1. That I guess 2-1 after we got Anunen. Wedgwood was the backup to start the season, and he was not getting that many starts. In the previous game, Saros was in goal, so he's 0-1 in that overtime. I guess 0-1 since it was an overtime loss. But I don't do that for goaltenders. I guess I should. All right, so that's not fair. All right. Anyway, last year in Philadelphia, Saros was also in both, so he was 2-0. And then for Colorado, because Anunen was in goal for Colorado last year, Georgiev got the main starts there. Neither of those are in Colorado anymore. But Anunen did not face Philadelphia last year for Colorado or for Nashville. Anunen did play against Vegas, and the parts of the game that I saw, he looked pretty good. I saw the first period. We went down to see the Nashville Sounds. Our newly engaged nephew and his fiancée were going to the game, and so we went down to see them and watch the Sounds get trounced. Nashville Sounds, Milwaukee Brewers, AAA affiliate. Not really a baseball fan anymore, but minor league baseball is a lot of fun. It's a great park here in Nashville. If you're coming to Nashville, if you're in Nashville, and it's a cheap date. $20 for seats in the down the first or third base line. There's lots of opportunities for cocktails. They got ping pong tables set up. I mean, it's really kind of a fun setup. Very intimate stadium. The sounds are generally good, and the teams. It's competitive. It's fun. Minor league baseball is fun, I think, and the Sounds are no different downtown. So if you're coming to Nashville and you're staying downtown, I recommend coming over and see the Sounds if they're in town. But so we didn't see these second and third periods, but I thought Anunen played well in the first. I think what was the the Preds at home when they score the first goal in the second period. They're 0-1. Well, I guess 0-2. I haven't updated my spreadsheet since Saturday's game. It had been a busy weekend, but I guess they're 0-2 now. So, getting the first goal in the second period does not lead to victory for the Preds, but they've been better off having Vegas score first in the second period. Can't say that. You can't say that. I did. So just between us, I didn't say that. Anyway, so Anunen was in goal versus Vegas. So Saros tonight. We are in the back-to-back situation, the front end of a back-to-back. So front end of a back-to-back. Saros will be in goal versus Philadelphia, and then Anunin versus Columbus tomorrow night. As far as players to watch for Philadelphia, it really comes down to two guys. Number 11 and number 39, both right wings. Travis Konecny and Matvey Maikov. Number 11, Konecny, and 39, Maikov, both right wings. They are tied in first in the team for goals at 24. Konecny has 5 more assists, but they are first and second in assists, which makes them first and second in points. Plus minus, they're at minus 13 and minus 14. Konecny is the forward that you'll see most of the time on the ice. He's third in ice time, 20-41. And these two guys are also first and second in shots. So actually, they switch positions in this case. Maikov is first, 179, to Konecny's 173, which is way below. That's interesting. It's way below where the Preds are. The Preds, Forsberg, 257. Second is Marchessault at 197, and then it drops down to Stamkos, 157. The top guys on Philadelphia not shooting as much as the other teams. Another interesting stat, Konecny and Maikov. Konecny is also first in penalty minutes. So he's first in goals, first in assists, first in points, first forward in time on ice, second in shooting, and first in penalty minutes. Maikov is fourth. He was third, and somebody jumped past him for 51 and 44. But yeah, so those two guys, those are the guys to watch, 11 and 39. They just pencil it in. For the Preds, not much change in how and where people are at. Forsberg is still first in everything. 28 goals, 39 assists, 67 points. He's at minus 18. The plus minus kind of went up a bit for all of these guys. Forsberg first in shots with 257. Second in goal scoring is Stamkos now, 23. Marchessault's dropped to third with 19, and O'Reilly at 17. Fourth is 17. Marchessault is second in assists at 30. That puts him second in points for 49. Stamkos is fifth in assists, but puts him third with 45 points. O'Reilly is just fourth. He's fourth in goals. He's fourth in assists. He's fourth in points. He's fourth worst in plus minus. He's fourth in time on ice. He should have a 4 on his jersey. Blankenberg, unfortunately, must have had a couple of bad games because he's dropped from 9 plus minus of 9 to 5, down to 5, and So. Stamkos has with Yossi being out, Stamkos has now got the worst plus minus on the team, minus 27. So that's the point updates. But yeah, if you're not familiar with the Preds, any player with a 9 or number divisible by 9, 81, is somebody to watch. Now, granted, that's more than a couple. 59. Well, Yossi's out; he'll be out the rest of the season. 90, 91, and 9, and 81. So there you go. Players to watch. For momentum, Philadelphia just had their coach fired. Now they've won 2. But they did give up 4 goals in each of those 2 wins, which, that's a difference between Eastern Conference and Western Conference hockey for you. I mean, just kind of right there. Right there. That's it. You get 4 goals in the Western Conference, and you're gonna win. You get 4 goals in the Eastern Conference, and it's still up for debate. Philadelphia did lose 6 in a row leading up to Tortorella's firing. Tortorella, I think has. I know I keep putting this what I think is an Italian spin on it. No disrespect. He's a really good coach. Didn't do it this year, or last year, or the year before, or before that. Anyway, Philadelphia is 3-6-1 in the last 10. Just a shout out. We were the last Philadelphia game we were at, and there was a Philadelphia fan behind me. And I just happened to say to him, I thought it was the ugliest uniforms in the league. And he was like, no, it's great. And I should have, I should have been more specific. It is the ugliest white jersey in the league. I think their orange jerseys are fine. One of the things that bothers me about Philadelphia that I don't think I see anything else is that the names look like they were add-on to the team as opposed to being stitched into it. It's like they had this placard and they just put it on the back of the uniforms, which I think looks kind of ugly. And they do that in the home uniforms as well as the road uniforms. But yeah, I think the road uniforms, it's just ugly. Maybe they need more orange in it. I don't know. But anyway, so the guy loved the Philadelphia jersey, which is great. He's a Philadelphia fan, so kudos to you. Yeah. Anyway, so that's where Philadelphia is. They've kind of got they've got a little bit of good momentum going right now, and a little bit of fire in their belly. As far as Nashville did beat Toronto and Carolina in fantastic games, just so good. And I thought, they St. Louis this year just had their number. They just unfortunately ran into St. Louis 3 times in a 6-game span. And so I think other than that, I think Nashville's record would be really a lot better right now. They're also 3-6-1 in the last 10, but if you take the 3 losses out, hey, if we take all 6 losses out, they're 3-0-1. Yeah, I'll take 3-0-1, but that's not how the season works, right? But anyway, so they ran into St. Louis. St. Louis has their number this year. We had St. Louis's number last year. But yeah, so I think Nashville has got a pretty good fire in their belly too. It's good to see some of the players playing really well. The Toronto and Carolina games, they were so fast and so well skated that was very exciting to see. Unfortunately, I guess the downer on tonight's game is that it is part of a back-to-back, and as I've mentioned, the Preds have not done very well on the road in back-to-backs. They are 3-17 in back-to-back games on the road, and then on the front half of the away, they are 2-8, and then on the back they're 1-9. So they're only 2-8 on away games. The front half of back-to-backs that were away games, and the front half won. 2 of those were away and home. But one of those was a win, one was a loss. So they, back to the whole this back-to-back situation has not been the friend of the Preds. Whether or not you call it bad scheduling, I would say that in general, 14 back-to-backs is probably not in and of itself too much or a problem. I just think that all of these being so many more of them being away games was not good. And I think I will say I think it's poor scheduling for that to happen. So I don't know the parameters on which they had to make some of these things. Going back to I mentioned, if you listened a little bit, in grad school I was working on a schedule. I was with the artificial intelligence branch of the Georgia Tech Research Institute when I was working on my master's in computer science at Georgia Tech, and the first project I had in GTRI was to apply artificial intelligence techniques to scheduling the American League of Baseball. The guy that was funding us died a couple of months after I started at Georgia Tech, and so once he died, the funding was taken away, so I had to switch to other projects. But I still have my notes. I still have all the information, and it's kind of interesting how teams want to be at home at certain times and need to be on the road at certain times. So the Orioles did not want to be anywhere near Baltimore when the Preakness happened. It's very cold in Texas at the beginning of the season, so they prefer to be on the road to start the season. Everybody thought the Yankees was their biggest rival. The Yankees didn't think that anybody was their rival. But yeah, interesting to see how there are certain times of the year when teams need to be home or want to be home or need to be away. The Kings always go on the road for a long road trip, about 2 weeks. When the Grammys come to Los Angeles, they plan to get out of town. And Nashville, don't know that there's anything in particular. There was something that going on here. I looked that up. Some country music award. I guess country music awards, when they're in town, the Preds prefer to be away. But that wasn't that long. I can't see that would have been something that would have influenced the Predators getting a schedule kind of like this. I did see some vagaries in the schedule this last year, where it seemed like teams were playing the same team twice in a row. And, at the beginning of the season, there were a couple of overseas games, and the Preds get to play in Sweden to start off, I think, next season. And so they will play the same team back-to-back because you're not going to fly more than two teams. So two teams will go over to Sweden. They'll play back-to-back games, probably just two. And then so you'll see it there. But I've seen it a number of times, like the Preds played the Sharks here in Nashville and then flew to San Jose to play them in San Jose. So that kind of stuff is kind of weird. And, there was a couple days between the games, so I don't really see that is that big of a deal. Some of the teams are playing other teams back-to-back, and they're traveling. Now, the Florida teams do it, the New York teams do it. That's not really that big a deal, and I don't think our announcers seem to think going to St. Louis and back is that big a deal. We had a 6-game road trip that started in St. Louis, and they kept calling it a 5-game road trip because they could go to St. Louis and come home and then go to the rest of it, but I still call it a 6-game road trip. But yeah, so I think that the scheduling hasn't been a friend of the Preds, and here we are with our last back-to-back, Philadelphia tonight, Columbus tomorrow. At least games are both at 6 o'clock Eastern. The Preds haven't got the best record in these situations. They haven't, looking back up here, they haven't won a road game in a back-to-back situation since February 7th when they beat Chicago 6-2. They played Chicago in Chicago, then came to Buffalo and lost. Oh, they won. They beat Buffalo the next day, and that was the 9th back-to-back. So this is the 14th. So that was 5 back-to-backs ago, and that was the beginning of February. That was the last time they won. They did win 2 in a row when they were on the road, Vancouver and Calgary. Those were good wins there. So again, I don't necessarily think that the fact that there are 14 back-to-backs is that big of a deal, but I don't know. It just it's hard to find. I think I've already said I do think that it's a problem how many back-to-backs they've got when they're on the road. I think that is. I think that's poor scheduling on the NHL's part. Anyhow, so there you go. Philadelphia Flyers are home tonight. 6 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Eastern. The Nashville Predators are coming to town to end Philadelphia's winning streak. That's what's going to happen. The Preds are going to get 3 goals in the first, and not add to the second period total. And then probably get 2 in the third. They will probably give up 3 goals at some point, maybe in the second. But yeah, I'm just going to come out because I'm terrible at this, so I should do it more often. The Preds are going to win 5-3 tonight in Philadelphia. Thanks for listening. I am Preston Proctor, and you've been listening to Predators Proclivity.